Have you ever just imagined yourself as a farmer, minding your own business, growing your own crops, and capitalizing it on a small town that you're living in, and for some reason just have that small part in your heart that just feels so lonely? Well, good for you. In the particular town that you're living in, there are just 12 people who might just have an interest in you. And this is in a video where I'm going to be talking about those 12 Stardew Valley spouses. By the way, as a quick disclaimer, these are just my own personal opinions on these characters. Please don't feel offended if I don't talk about them good, and I haven't gotten the chance to play 1.6, so yeah. In no particular order, I am going to start off with Sam, and I am going to give him an A-. And you may recognize him, very easy guy to spot with that Goku hair of his. And he comes off as this golden retriever type of guy. He is quite extroverted, he likes to skateboard, he has a great interest in music and has his own band with Abigail and Sebastian. Some people think of him as the youngest out of all of the Bachelor and Bachelorettes, and I can kind of see that if you pay attention. Well, you don't need to pay that much attention, but you definitely notice that he gets into himself in these certain situations where he just seems quite irresponsible and literally drops an egg. And he appreciates it more if you take the accountability instead of his, which I don't know how I feel about that. I'm quite an irresponsible person myself to some extent, but I don't want to take someone else's credit of being messy. He has a nice heart event though, where it gives off this romance, fanfiction, teen stuff, where you sneak into his bedroom. Not the best hiding spot since you're just hanging out on the other side of his bed, but oh well. And next up we have Shane, and oh boy, there is definitely a lot of things to talk about this guy. Obviously not the first good impression, right? That guy literally asks you to bugger off, and if you go to Jojo Mart, he definitely does not want to interact with you. Then we hit off to his second heart event, where you end up on this bridge at night, and he starts getting deep all of a sudden, which he also gives you his beer, and when you drink it, you get tipsy, where you basically feel super slow and super weak. I think it's an ironic yet cool detail that this is quite a symbolism of alcohol, considering that, you know, Shane struggles with alcoholism, and imagine just him feeling that particular debuff all the time, right? Anyways, his 4 hearts and 6 hearts definitely continue on with that particular storyline, where he just gets frustrated with himself and eventually comes almost into this scenario where he gets really, you know. But eventually when you help him out, he starts to recognize that you are a kind person and you actually do care, I suppose, depending on what kind of choices you told him. But yeah, he starts to get better, he starts to get more friendly, and I would personally give him a C as a general character, but I will point out some certain stuff that I would have given him a B if the game recognized his development at the end and took off that beer interest out of his love category, right? Because a lot of people complain the same thing, where also his spouse room, man. A lot of people mod it to get even cleaner or to symbolize that he is getting better. And you just get this musty, dirty, grungy, I don't know. And so if those certain parts of his characters were updated to be more into his development and growth, I would have given him a B. So Penny. First off, I'd like to say that she's quite a considerate and nice person. She is the teacher of all of the kids, which I would say are just literally Vincent and Jazz. And her second heart event caused quite the ruckus in the Stardew community. It's where George just couldn't get that letter at the very end of the box because he's in a wheelchair, right? And Penny just so happened to be there and offered to help. Now, the animation didn't do her justice, right? It looked like she was actually pushing George. It affected a lot of people about that, saying that it was ableist of her and she would have done better if she actually asked for consent first. And obviously George wasn't very pleased with that. He got quite angry. I mean, George gets angry all the time, but I think, yeah, that's quite a reasonable time to get frustrated. She also lives with her mother, Pam, in that trailer when you first start off the game. And obviously Pam is not the greatest mother, not the greatest person to live with, to be honest, which most likely developed her interest into becoming this better person and wanting to take care of Vince and Jazz as this mother kind of figure with them. So a lot of her heart events involve with family issues, family stuff in general, and having kids, right? Well, if she brings up the topic of wanting to have children or having a family, if you just choose the wrong option of saying, no, I'm not into that, well, unluckily for you, she is going to cut those hearts down and you're gonna end up having maybe 2 or 4 left. A lot of people find that annoying gameplay wise, but it's kind of a reasonable thing when you think about it. In real life, you don't really want to spend time with that person and marry them if they don't align with your interests. So unless you can work things out like that or think just like Penny, you might not like being her significant other. And so for that, I am gonna give her a B+. Now you're probably just gonna roll your eyes at me and say, of course. But next up we have Leah, and I am gonna give her an S. I mean, she's an artsy girl. She's ginger, sorry Penny. She has a cute ponytail and I really like her. She has this interesting parallel of this person who wanted to pursue in art and she left, what is it, Zuzu City to come to Pelican Town and, you know, do all of her fun, passionate stuff. So her second heart event is quite interesting. You come into her cottage and ask how she's doing. She says that she's proud to be an artist and is able to make her passion become a reality, but it comes with a catch that the bills aren't being paid well. She mentions those problems to you and you eventually get this decision to ask, or well, not ask, advise her to say, maybe you can either post your stuff online and sell it there, or you can do this community thing in Stardew Valley and just show off your art. Her story kind of revolves around this subplot of her relationship with Kel. If you don't know who Kel is, it's her ex. And interestingly enough, I was about to say she, but he can actually also be a he, depending on the gender of your farmer. And so as you continue on, she is just a great person in general. She's kind, and eventually, depending on what you chose, you can either do the selling online stuff, or you can do the art community thing. And you can actually see Kel in the background. I personally like the option where she asks everyone to come by and pretty much show off her interesting and abstract art pieces, but eventually at the end she actually dedicates that it was all because of the farmer, and that's really cool. I forgot to mention, I think it was her 4 heart event where she gives that sculpture, wooden sculpture, Leah's sculpture. As I said, still quite abstract, but it's still a nice gesture and you can just put it in your house and make it a nice decorative piece that will work depending on your aesthetic. Then at the end, Kel pretty much comes back to ask Leah to go back with them at Zuzu City, and obviously she wouldn't like that. Actually, Leah stands up for herself and defends you because Kel kind of I don't know, says something sly or whatever, and she pretty much hits him back, and pretty violent, Leah. But yeah, I really like her. She's getting an S on my book.
I'd like to take my whiskey neat.
Mr. Harvey, the town doctor. The guy who pretty much takes 1,000 G from you for passing out at the mines or skull caverns. I don't know which is which, but he does anyways. But he's a pretty nice guy. He definitely takes care of all of the people around him in the community pretty much, and is patient enough to deal with George's BS. There is that one scene where you catch Harvey participating in this aerobics club at Caroline's house, and at first I thought in my interpretation that he just felt embarrassed that he is the only guy joining in with those ladies. But people actually saw it in a different way, where it's more so Harvey feeling embarrassed that you, the farmer in particular, saw him. And he comes up with this excuse that, well, it's not an excuse, it's more so a reasonable thing that it's just to keep his health up. It shows off more of his sensitive side, and to be honest, it's quite cute. Then on to the next scene where it shows off his interest in planes or the Air Force, I'm not really sure, but along that category where he pretty much tries to communicate at random frequencies with other pilots in the sky. And even though he has a fear of it, he takes you into this hot air balloon as a romantic gesture. Then he starts hugging you because he hasn't really fully accepted his fear of heights. And, you know, Harvey, you tried your best to get over your fear and made a move, whether it's intentional or not, to the farmer by hugging them. Even so, Harvey, I don't know if the farmer knows how to maneuver the plane themselves, but you better be, because you were the one who grabbed us and brought us up there. So if we just so happen to crash on the ground, do not expect me to pay your medical bills. Also, Harvey, if you are my husband, why are you still charging me full for passing out in the mines? I know I'm a rich multi-millionaire farmer who has a massive income every day, but come on, Harvey. Alex. A minus if you're playing as a male farmer, and B minus if you're playing as a female farmer. And so, I will admit that I am quite particularly biased because he is the only Stardew marriage candidate that I actually married with. I swear I don't like him for the bad traits, but let me explain, okay? Obviously the biggest flaw about Alex is, whether he meant it intentionally or not, is that he tends to come off as quite misogynistic. He has these sexist comments about women, girls, and a lot of his dialogue involves with quite gender-specific topics or details. He starts off as this egotistical jock who plays a lot of grid ball, but then eventually you head on to his 4-heart event where you catch him talking to Dusty, and it's quite this melancholic vibe when you start off. Eventually he tells you the story of how he ended up with his grandma and grandfather, and it's because of his abusive father and his mother passing away at such a young age. And if you continue to befriend him, he eventually apologizes to you, saying that he wasn't the best person when you first started interacting with him, and good for you, Alex. Then he also confronts the idea that he might not be good enough, which is kind of a sad thing. If you look into his story more, that's exactly what his father has been telling him, and that brings him quite down. But at least he doesn't try to let those comments get to him, and he keeps his chin up. Originally, I was gonna go for Leah or Sam, but it was his 8-heart event, man. It was his 8-heart event that caught me. Once again, depending on the gender of your farmer, he has quite interesting dialogue if you were male, and he says that you are a quite sensitive guy and he likes that, and yep, A minus for a male farmer. Maru, a golden child, very smart, and has quite the strong ambitions. Her first heart event is weird because it involves Demetrius, and why does he have to be so ominous about saying he wants to protect Maru? Like, dude, I just first started talking to her. This is just her first heart event, man, calm down. A little bit of a rocky start, right? Well, that isn't her fault, it's Demetrius' fault, but her next heart event involves with her dropping a glass vial of samples. Unlike Sam, who drops an egg, she drops samples. And kind of a similar scenario, you either have to blame yourself or blame it on Maru, and she did not hesitate to agree with the idea of blaming it on yourself. Then you get the cutscene in her backyard where you get the chance to look up into her telescope and watch the big beautiful sky full of stars. And there is a little bit of romantic tone under that, but I guess considering that it's only her 6 heart event, they didn't want to push it all the way that quickly, unless you are actually up into her 8 heart event and give her that bouquet, but I don't know, that was an interesting experience. But not as interesting as her 10 heart event, where you eventually go down into her basement and find out that she has been working on this robot that somehow gained sentience. But the reason for that was quite sweet and considerate, because it was meant for her to take hold of her spot when she eventually leaves Demetrius and Robin alone to take care of them. And it also kind of helped Demetrius reflect on his actions and realize that Maru isn't a child anymore and a grown-up who can make her own decisions. And Demetrius comes to accept the fact that the farmer is a sweet person and can be a compatible relationship with Maru, his own daughter. So pretty cool scene. I'm gonna give her A for that. I'm sure there are a bunch of Sebastian fans out there, so please don't attack me, but I'm gonna give him a B. But let's be honest, Sebastian, especially as someone who you just started the game and trying to get to know everyone, he is one of the most difficult characters to interact with, considering he he mainly stays in his bedroom, goes around the house to get to the fridge, and then come back. I think Abigail at some point comes over, but still, come on. Robin has a great mom, right? But her and Sebastian have this certain dynamic where he tends to be a lot more moody and feels very misunderstood, which I understand. It's quite unfortunate that he feels that way, and I wouldn't say he's mean towards Robin, but more so moody. Thinking about it, Sam and Sebastian are quite different in terms of personality and I guess character design. Sam comes off more as this golden retriever, as I've said, and Sebastian is more of a black cat that doesn't want to interact with anyone, but just finds that particular person interesting. You get to see him work on his motorcycle, and you eventually come to this heart event where you play D&D, pretty much. I'm not a D&D person myself, but this is really, really cool. It's pretty much established that he tends to isolate himself a lot and feels lonely at the same time, but there was that one scene where it's raining and you both are at the docks and he pulls this umbrella out of nowhere saying that, hey, there's room for 2. Also that one part where he gets his motorcycle ready and drives down to Zuzu City while taking you there, and you both end up at this cliff and watch the beautiful city skyline at the horizon. Dude, my guy has some sweet moves. For someone who doesn't like to interact with people that much, he definitely knows what he's doing. And up next we have Haley, which I am gonna give her a C+, and perhaps maybe a B, I'm not really sure. So gotta be honest, just like Shane and Alex, you don't really have the best first impressions with her. She comes off as Regina George from Mean Girls and calls your shoes ugly. And the thing is with Haley is that she is in a particular part in her life where she's already quite content. She may not have enough clothes, but she's pretty happy with her life. Unlike Shane and Alex, she doesn't really have this sad backstory that comes with her, which I think a lot of people felt turned off because she just seemed really snarky and mean just in general. Her 2 Hearts event with Emily just really showed off how rude she can be, saying that she doesn't really need to do chores or want to, and Emily has to do all of that and act as the grown-up. The pickle jar scene didn't really make sense. It just felt flat. All you eventually do is just open the jar lid and she just feels happy about that, and I don't know how that contributes to Haley's personality in a good way, but yeah. And it's during her 6 heart event where we get a bit of a shift in tone, where Haley loses her grandma's bracelets and asks, bracelet and asks the farmer, hey, can you help me find it? Which for some reason is next to Elliot's shack. I don't know why, but sure thing. And when you give it back to her, she actually is really thankful for it. And it's quite refreshing to see that she actually values stuff that holds sentimental value rather than just monetary. So good for you, Haley. And up next, we start to see that she becomes more carefree around the farmer. She does stuff that isn't usually aligned with her previous one and jumps over Marnie's fences to play around with the barn animals, gets muddy, laughs it off. Gotta be honest, the 110 heart event where you end up into her photograph development room, I know it's supposed to be red for a reason, but it's still quite eerie. So I'm gonna be talking about Emily, and I don't really know what to say about her. A lot of her cutscenes and heart events involve this mind space thing, which I don't think really kind of helps develop your friendship or relationship with her in general. It's just a little bit weird, I gotta be honest. A bunch of people consider Emily to be boring, saying that she doesn't really change much or develop. But the thing is that Emily is already quite satisfied with who she is right now. Why would she want to change her character if she doesn't want to or need to? And people need to consider that she's a fun character, definitely interesting, and she has this one scene where she gathers people around and shows off the power of expressing yourself with clothing. You get to see Shane, you get to see Robin, you get to see Abigail changing into these different costumes and stuff. And I know she probably isn't trying to be harsh or seem harsh or show off that she doesn't want Clint in particular, but girls gotta keep an eye on him. Otherwise, there might be some problems, I'm sure. Or maybe not, because Clint is just gonna be too afraid to make a move, a proper move. I'm sorry, Clint. I know you're lonely, but I don't, There's also that time where you and Emily go camping into the forest and that bear comes out of nowhere, eventually scares both of you, and you go in the camping tent. And next we have Elliot, who comes at B-. Appearance-wise, definitely on his portrait, a lot of people didn't really like the idea of him looking sideways and giving you that side eye. I can definitely see people feeling that they just feel looked down upon, especially with that smirk of his. I think it's more so to show off his elegance with his long flowy hair, but it's not really doing him justice. Just like Leah, he's an artist in a different form of media, poetry and writing more specifically. Same thing, he came from Zuzu City, I think, or in a different larger area where he basically found that shack that was available at the time, and he just so happened to take it, and it was to feel inspiration and solitude from anywhere else. You were just minding your own business at the saloon, just drinking, having some food, and Elliot at some point comes in where he asks Gus to order a bunch of drinks for a toast. It's kind of funny how Gus looked quite annoyed at that, but whatever. It kind of looked like Elliot only just took one swig out of whatever drink he got from Gus. Probably spiked, but I don't know if I should joke about that. He ends up just having to dance, funnily, weirdly, and the farmer just laughs along with him. Then, similar to Leah, you come across this part where Elliot is in the library and gathers everyone to discuss about the new book that he wrote. And I think it depends on which dialogue you pick for him early on with his relationship. Same thing, he discusses it, he tells the story, and at the end he dedicates that it was because all of the farmer and thanks to them. You can interpret his 10 heart event in whatever you want. Some people kind of find it weird. Even though Harley kind of does the same thing with his hot air balloon. Elliot takes you with him to his boat and rows you off kind of far away from the beach, where to the point it's all just water, and he confesses to you about certain stuff, about his new book that he wants to go travel along, and out of nowhere, in the middle of all of that conversation, he does the bold move to what looked like a kiss. Unlike Harvey, he just gives you a hug out of fear. Elliot himself even points out that you were shaking and asks if you were okay. Yeah. And last but not least, the person who you all have been waiting for, the rock eater Abigail, who I am gonna give her an A+. I'd say out of all of the Bachelor and Bachelorettes altogether, she has quite the most fascinating theoretical lore that comes with it. You know, the wizard, because they both have purple hair. I don't know if people really confirmed that, but I will point out that there were instances in her dialogue that icked me a little bit, saying that she missed having to invade your grandfather's farm. I'm not gonna go into detail about how she eats rocks because a lot of people just seem to make that her entire personality, and I don't want to keep building onto that. So I think playing video games with her is a cool way to gauge into her personality and character, as well as introducing that one minigame, Prairie King. But honestly, imagine having to actually beat the game to gain friendship points with her. Could you imagine how crazy that is? Also, how cool Stardew would be if it expanded a lot more on adventuring and combat, where what if you could bring your spouses or just other NPCs along with to battle with you? She could play the flute like a bard, and she could either fight with a sword, because she has this interest in sword fighting that you for some reason find out when she's at the graveyard. Her 8-heart event, though, I have to say is one of the funniest scenes, where she basically introduces this concept of a spirit board where you pretty much ask whatever spirits you come in contact with, and you have to hover your hands over this board, and eventually it pretty much outs her, saying that she likes you, so that's pretty funny. Alright then, that's all I have for now. I gotta say, I need to stop talking, otherwise this video would have been 30 minutes. So yeah, I'm gonna start talking right now. Hope you guys like this video, and subscribe if you want more. So I'll see you then. Bye!